What's up, everybody? It's Flake. I've got another list for you. I know it's been a little while. Been a little busy and took some time away, but I figured, you know what, it's time to jump back in. And I've got a list that I actually threw a flare out to the developers at CDPR a little while ago. It took them a little bit to get back to me, but here we are with a list of kind of, I wouldn't call them cards that we didn't quite see, but iterations of cards that we almost saw that have otherwise changed. Now, I did do a video about this earlier, a long time ago, actually, probably like 2 years ago, of cards that we almost saw. So if you want to go take a look at this like way back when, you could go ahead and follow the link. I'll leave it in the description of this video of, it was like 6 or 7 cards and abilities that we almost saw. Now, that's a while ago, but this is the new list, ladies and gentlemen. Here are the top 5 cards we almost saw. At number 5 is the Dire Bear, and the Dire Bear exists as it does right now, but the Dire Bear's original ability was that, just like that, slam it on the board, all units cannot be boosted. Yes, that was the ambient effect, the aura effect of the Dire Bear. There was no real, it wasn't a row-locked, issue. It was just the fact that basically you jam it on the board and that's it. Nobody gets any love. You just slam it in there and it shuts the door on any boosting abilities on both sides. And this could really work well in any Skelegalist, frankly, but maybe it was a little bit too powerful. Again, a lot of these cards that come to me are from Molegion helped me out here and gave me some of the thought processes behind here. And to quote Molegion on this one, he says, "We wanted to go with a crazy and unusual effect for all the beasts. So Dire Bear was supposed to affect all units at first, but we discarded it because it felt like it could single-handedly win some matchups. Felt like K here, but without the weakness to tall removal." So there you have it, the Dire Bear, just shutting down all boosts. At number 4, it's Itter or Itter, IDR, big bug, nonetheless. So here's the way that this card exists right now. Wasn't the original idea for the card. The way that the original idea for the card was, that didn't make it to print, was that this card triggers Thrive twice. So you're going to trigger that Thrive 2 times. And basically the thought behind this was the fact that they wanted to create a card that can trigger cards like Kikim or Queen and triggering Thrive twice. It did have some technical limitations, according to Molegion, so it went with something a little bit safer, and that's how the card exists today. And they're happy with the card, even though it doesn't necessarily see play. It doesn't see play today, and that may change down the line. At number 3, we're going to give you good old Maxi. Now, Maxi is a card that fits so nicely in so many decks. It's a nice 5 provision, 6-point body that really does help out your draws. It's a great card to have in a round that you can give up, or if you don't want to commit too much, it's never a bad play to make. It's 6 points of body. It does help your draws down the road, so it doesn't necessarily feel like a bad thing to do in any round, frankly. But Maxi originally was going to be play a bomb from your deck. Now, it was a bomb tutor, and Maxi did come out with the Way of the Witcher expansion back in December of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And Maxi, since then, well, she's changed to what we see her today, but she was originally a bomb tutor. So why the change? Well, here's to quote Molegion, "This was a bit of a fun fact rather than a cool card," he says, "because bomb tutors might not be too interesting." Well, tutors themselves might not be interesting as cards, but basically they wanted to give some support to the bomb archetype, and though Maxi eventually did change, it did lead to another idea to support bombs, which eventually became Maddox. So what Maxi didn't get to do to support the bomb archetype eventually gave birth to the card that we know and love today, called Maddox, which sees itself in so many different factions, and the bomb archetype has been ever since supported and pretty strong by Maddox, and that's basically because Maxi started as a bomb tutor, and that gave birth to Maddox. At number 2 is Gezras, or Gezra, depending how you want to call him, but this Scoia'tael staple for a while did have a different effect. We see it now. It's got the adrenaline effect that jumps around and does the old do-si-do from melee to ranged row, boosting and damaging all along the way. The difference is that Gezra eventually became what it is today off of an initial idea was the fact that it was going to sit on the board and allow you to play cards for both the melee and the ranged row effect at the same time. So picture a card like Teruvial, depending on which row you play it, it would have the double effect on that card. Now, that no longer is the case because basically, to quote our good friend Molegion, he said, we had to discard this idea for now because it was born quite late and didn't have time to really get it settled in and tested more or less. So it's an idea that may eventually still pop up because who knows? This is a card eventually that may see its effect in another card down the road. But Gezra says it exists today. Started out as an effect that was another sort of ambient effect where your cards that had melee and range row effects would basically trigger them both at the same time. All right, and number one, I'm going to cheat here. We did talk about Gezras and Adrenaline. It is actually what Adrenaline originally was. Yes, we all know Adrenaline now as a bonus or a detriment, depending on how many cards you have in your hand when you play it. If the Adrenaline effect is online, typically cards will get a boost. You know, things like Bear Witcher or Gezras or Colgrim, they'll get better and better and better as Adrenaline kicks in. The difference is that's not what Adrenaline started out as. Adrenaline originally had this effect, and this is the official from CDPR wording for what Adrenaline was. So Adrenaline X, let's say, would basically be described as this. Trigger this ability if you played specified amounts of units with the same primary category in a streak. Playing a card with a different type of the primary category breaks the streak. Streaks break between rounds. So think of it this way. If you had a card like Bear Witcher, let's say, which now has an Adrenaline 4 effect in order to get the full effect off of it. If it had an Adrenaline 4 and you wanted to pop off the Adrenaline, you would have to play its primary category, which I guess is a Witcher. You'd have to play 4 Witchers in a row to build up that Adrenaline to get the card off. And that's what Adrenaline basically was at the time. It's no longer how many cards you have left in your hand. It's how can you build up streaks of playing and drawing cards in that effect. Now, completely different. And basically, the thought process behind this, according to our good friend Molegion, was that they wanted to incentivize thinking about categories more often and more prevalent. Now, it was kind of abandoned because the mechanic would require some interesting UI interactions and the streaks and such and the factions. So it was not exactly the easiest thing to get programmed and online at the right time. And the fact is that a lot of them were all Witchers, and you know, some of them had mixed categories. So if you're building the streaks, getting the streaks proper, and what is a primary, what is a secondary, it was a little bit, it formed. It's a nice thing to think about and simple to execute in your mind when you think about these kinds of Adrenaline effects. But ultimately, when it comes to multiple category cards and making sure that it's not just going to be Witchers that have Adrenaline bonuses, kind of was a little bit problematic. And ultimately, Adrenaline is what it is today. So there you have it, friends. Those are the 5 cards we almost saw. Well, 4 plus an ability. And if you like this list, you can check out my other lists here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. It always is a good thing to do. And yeah, which one of these cards do you think that might actually see in the future? I'm going to think that the Gezras effect is something that we'll likely see very soon. And who knows what else the future lies. But give me your thoughts, your reactions in the comments. Love to see them. Again, you can catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/WatchFlake, or on Twitter @WatchFlake. Flake loves you. Be kind to one another. I'll see you soon. Adios.